Okay. I guess we are live now. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our channel. This is actually our very first episode on the Behind the Defense Lines channel on YouTube. So, just as a way of introduction, and we just want to encourage you as well also to like our video, subscribe to the channel, so subsequently whenever we're having these conversations, you always be updated as regards new videos we have uploaded when we are live and having conversations around the various defense line space. So as a way of introduction, my name is Graham. Um, my background is in engineering, but I happen to find myself within the compliance space. I've done a bit of compliance and internal control, but we are not here to. This is not my stage. So the stage here is for Chidi Ebere. Chidibere's profile is mind blowing, I must say. You know, when you see people that cut across multiple fintechs. It's so that's the guest we have with us here. Okay. So I think sorry about that. I know what happened to my internet connection. So we were at as a way of introduction. So Chidi, over to you. Just tell us about yourself, your background, what you actually do, what are your hobbies, like fun stuffs you do just to get things rolling. So the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Graham. My name is Chidibere Josephat. I am a financial crimes and compliance
Chidi, if you can
professional.
hear me, go ahead.
I am already speaking. Can you hear me?
Chidi, can you hear me?
Yes, and I'm speaking already. Can you hear me?
Everything was okay. Yeah.
It seems only Graham cannot hear me. I think he's having network issues.
It's Chidi. Kindly confirm you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Chidi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How about you?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay. So thank you very much. My name is Chidebere
Yeah, yeah, I
Joseph.
can hear you. I can hear you.
I'm a financial crimes and compliance professional with experience across AML, KYC, onboarding, EDD, transaction monitoring, and risk analysis. I have worked with several institutions. I started my career right from Florida Wave, and then I went on to PiggyVest, and from there, and then so when it comes to hobbies, I don't really do a whole lot of fun stuff. Yeah, but I think I love cooking. Yes, so that's just for my hobbies. And I think I love traveling, but I've not traveled to anywhere in a long while. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you.
How many states have you visited in Nigeria?
Uh, say 12. I visited a whole lot of states. That's because I kept changing schools when I was younger and then staying with different people. So I've lived in, say, up to 12 states.
Wow, that's quite a lot. That's quite a lot. So I'm not so sure, but I think we didn't get your background. I
Okay.
don't know if I missed that.
Yes, but I'm happy to go over it again. So I started my career right from Florida Wave.
So
Tech-
I'm like, what you studied over at the university? What's your educational
Okay,
background?
so funny stuff. I studied mass communication.
Wow. Go ahead, go ahead. That's cool. Really strange one. The transitioning.
Yes, yes. So while growing up, I wanted to like be in HR. I even have the ACIPM stuff. I had
Oh,
everything like set out to be in HR, and then as we may have it here in compliance.
okay. So as a follow up to this, so just walk us through your journey. Like you started off at Flutterwave. So how did you stumble upon the job application? Then from there, what led into your transition into Piggyverse, then finally to Money Point right now. So just walk us through that. Walk us through your journey so far.
Okay, so my journey, yeah, like it, I did not wake up and say, "Oh, I want to work in AML." Yes, so I just saw a job application. I think I was fresh out of NYSC. Then and Flutterwave was having their graduate trainee program.
Okay.
So I applied for the people operations role then. Yes, so I was employed for the role, and then when the short list came out and I was assigned to compliance, and I'm like, oh my god, I mean, should I complain? Should I? So I just took it as fate, and then when I learned what compliance was, I think the job grew on me. I liked it. It became something that I wanted to do. It became something that I actually liked. I mean, I can see myself doing compliance for a very, very long time. And I became exceedingly good at it, I must say.
Mm,
So, and then I think when time reached, I needed to leave to PiggyVest. I think you would remember a time where there was a ban on fintechs for onboarding, right? So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there was a lot of pressure from regulators then. So I saw that opportunity to, you know, prove myself elsewhere, help another financial institution. So I took that opportunity, and I can say it was a good move for me because people were asking, why are you leaving Flutterwave? I mean, but it was not just for the money. I wanted to do something. I wanted to like make that impact. I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to, work more. And here now at Money Point, so I'm actually working for the Money World arm of Money Points. That's the UK entity, and it's been good. I mean, learning even about the UK regulation and how it intersects with Nigeria regulations and the like. So the journey has been tough. I mean, there are sleepless nights sometimes. There are times where you have to work from morning till
Okay.
night. Yeah, but ultimately it is rewarding. Yeah. Can you still hear me?
Okay. Okay. That's good. So it's safe to say now that you have dropped your HR hats. Yeah, I'm saying like it's safe to say you have dropped your HR hats. Like there's no going back to HR.
Well, so the thing about hats is you never really, really drop them. So something may happen, right, in the future
Oh, you keep them
where
somewhere in your
yes,
drawers.
yes, yes. And so the thing about compliance, right? The skills that I've been able to learn from people management, you actually apply it in compliance because you have to manage stakeholders consistently. You have the technical team, you have the senior management, you have even the your team members, the entire company. So you still have to manage people. So I think that gave me an edge, right, in terms of communication, strategic and business communication, thinking, and then people management. So I think that skill is also what helped me stand out.
Okay, okay, that's great. So our next question would be, what are the regulations currently now that's okay? So I think maybe we just no before this, maybe you just talk small just to give our viewers a quick understanding of when we say compliance, when we say people may not really get some of these things. I know one of the video I did previously was just an introduction to the three lines of defense, but if you can just uh, tell us what is compliance really, and um, just maybe touch a bit, not maybe a little detail on what you do to help give more insight into compliance and what you are doing. So that will just set the base, then we move on from there.
Okay, yeah, sure. So compliance by definition is simply adhering to rules, regulations, standards, right? That's like a
Chidi, you
broad.
got me? Or am I?
Yes, yes, I can hear you and I'm already responding.
Hello, Chidi, you got my question?
Yes, certainly.
Let me try.
Oh,
Yeah,
it
Chidi, did you get
seems,
my question?
yes, I did.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes, so as I was saying, so compliance is basically adhering to rules and regulations. And then compliance is broad. You have several laws, regulations, practices that you have to comply with. And then for me, what I basically do is financial crimes compliance, right? So it is that arm of compliance where you have to comply with various regulations that seeks to protect a business, albeit a financial institution or any other kind of institution from the risk of financial crimes. Now, for a business when set up is faced with several kinds of risk. Say for a financial institution, you have operational risk, you have financial crimes risk, you have sanctions risk, you have AML risk, you have fraud risk, you even have people risk, process risk, technology risk. Yeah. So for financial crimes risk, particularly AML and fraud, there are various rules, regulations, processes, guidelines that you have to follow in order to mitigate those risks. Risks are not something that you can wipe off completely. So, our job is to ensure that we mitigate risks. And how do we do this? We do this by ensuring that onboarding, which is the very first process in customer acquisition process, that onboarding is seamless. You get the required and accurate complete documents to ensure that you know who you are letting in on your platform. After that, you continuously monitor their activity. Oh, if a customer say he is employed, you want to ensure that the kind of transactions or behavior that they carry out are consistent with what employed individuals do. And that's what we have for ongoing monitoring. Then we have enhanced due diligence for high risk clients, where you have the PEPs, you have customers that are involved in real estate or cryptocurrency and stuff like that. Then we have transaction monitoring, and we have adverse media monitoring, sanction screening. So there are quite a lot of things that you have to ensure that you do to comply with those processes, those procedures, those guidelines of safeguarding your institution or a business from AML risk, financial crimes risk, fraud risk, business risks. So that's basically what compliance does. Did you get that? Oh, if you are speaking, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I got that. I got that. So I'm saying for our
Okay.
listeners, if you have any questions, you can drop it on chats. So I will say, so what are the regulations that are currently shaping the compliance space? So let's just a couple of them. We can just talk around those. Some key regulations that are shaping the space.
Yes. So in Nigeria, we have quite a lot of regulations, yeah, but very few. So I think the very first one that every compliance person needs to know, whether you are in a bank or a fintech or even a law firm, whichever business, it's the CBN AML CFT regulations 2022. So that's like the holy Bible when it comes to AML compliance. Yes, so everybody needs to read that regulation, understand it, know what it says, and know how to apply it in your daily process. And then, so that CBN regulation was actually called out from the Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022, Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act same year. And then I think we have another key regulation. So I believe that the CBN Administrative Sanctions 2023 is also a key
Oh,
regulation.
okay. Okay.
Yes, because when speaking to board members, or let me say senior management, you need to show them consequence, right? So if you tell me that, oh, we have to do this, I need to know why we should do this, and what if I don't do this, what is going to happen. So the administrative sanctions is also a key regulation that shaped my work. Yeah, so I have mentioned four of them, and then that's from a strategy perspective. Now, when it comes to an operations perspective, we have sector specific circulars from the CBN, like the customer due diligence regulations, the three-tiered KYC regulations, and then periodically we do have guidance notes from the NFIU. I think the last one they released was on suspicious activity reporting.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's 2024, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, 2024. Okay. Okay, so we'll move on from here. So, last year, 2025, one of the significant news around money laundering was the fact that Nigeria left the FATF grey lists. So, what can you tell us as regards what this means for compliance officers first, then what this means for Nigeria as a country? So we'll start with what it means for Nigeria, compliance officers first, then
Okay, so you want to hear what it means for Nigeria first? Okay, compliance officers first. So,
yeah, compliance officers first, yeah, Nigeria, yeah.
yeah, so the reward for a job well done is more work. So for compliance officers, it actually means more work because now, just lightly speaking, if you show me that you can do something well, I expect that job to be consistent. I expect you to do it well forever because you've done it well one time. So it simply means that the bar of expectation has been raised, right? And then what regulators, both local regulators and international regulators, would expect is that that bar of consistency remains the same. So for Nigeria, it's a significant milestone, and now we get less scrutiny from regulators and we can expect more foreign investors. But as a country, we now need to prove sustainability.
Yeah.
So I think from 2022 or was it 2023 when we were grey listed, what we're trying to do was remediation. We needed to fix the fix the loopholes. We needed to show readiness. So now we need to now show that the policies, the processes that we have are sustainable over time. So we need to show that all what we've been able to achieve that led us out of the gray list, we can, effectively and efficiently embed them to be resilient over time. It would not it would not be nice to be out of the gray list this year and then you are back in the gray list next year, you're out of the gray list again, offering, and then so that consistency is required. So we now need to sustain compliance.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so now since when we left the grey list up until this point, are there things like you think your organization has been doing differently even?
Uh, So from an operational perspective, not really, not much, but from a strategy point of view, I would say yes, because now emphasis is on maintaining standard. So governance has been strengthened. You now need to like keep on improving your documentation efforts. If you are compliant, then now you need to be, you know, very compliant. You need to ensure that you don't treat things as a one-off response to external pressure. So I think the pre-gray listing process and efforts were trying to, prove that we actually had controls, but now that we've proven that we have those controls, we now need to defend it and then sustain it. So from an operational point of view, not much will change. You keep doing what you are doing, but then from a strategy point of view, a lot is changing in that you have senior management buying, like they are now more interested in what you do as a compliance process, and then risk ownership. Because of that, they have to now take ownership of those risk key areas. So like I said, from an operational point of view, not much change, but from a strategy point of view, things change, things reshuffled, and then priorities had to shift a bit to ensure sustained compliance.
Okay, thank you for that. So just moving on. So now I want to get your views on the CBN drafts circular on the baseline standards for automated AML solutions.
So based on your background, I know you have done a lot of transaction monitoring, sanction screening, and all that. So what can you say about that draft circular that was done and advised by CBN last year as regards speaking about what institutions should do as it relates to ML solutions and all that, the measures they should put in place as regards using of AI, machine learning, and all that.
Yeah, so I would say kudos, although they were trying to play catch up, but then it's a step in the right direction. So automation it has come to stay. You know, formally we would do advanced media check using Google Boolean logic, but it's not sufficient. So for a company that has, say, 1,000 people sign up every day, and you have to run sanction screening check, advanced media checks on them manually, you see that you would keep getting backlog upon backlogs upon backlogs. So the exposure drafts on baseline standards are a welcome development. It's it's I'm trying to look for the word. It like gives us the kind of solution that we should use, what that solution should have, and how the solution should be governed. So I think the a key thing for me there is the governance perspective, because it's not just about automating compliance. We need to automate compliance in a defensible and explainable way, right? So I keep giving out this example every time, that when a regulator asks you, why did you onboard this customer, or why did you offboard this customer, you cannot just say the AI solution said so. The AI solution cannot be held accountable.
The final
Yes. So that governance process needs to be there. You need to train those solutions, right? Using the right amount of, data, have workable processes, governance processes there for you to be able to defend whatever you are doing in with that solution. So I would say one key area again is the fact that now financial institutions, it's no longer like optional. You know, we might be saying, oh, should we invest in automation? Should we not invest in automation? But now that it's a requirement, my view is that institutions must now treat it as part of strategy, right? It will no longer be, oh, can we afford it? But now it's something like we have to put it in our budget, because it's what is pushing us as an institution in the right direction in terms of AML and financial crimes compliance. So yes, so
Okay.
I think one last aspect is the calibration. So I think the baseline standards talked about how you must fine tune the transaction monitoring rules, the advanced media logic, like that. So this calibration will now bring industry standard, right, across institutions. So the way I'm doing it here would be almost similar to the same way someone else in a different
Yeah.
institution is doing it. So that calibration is there, and then it's now be consistent everywhere. So the way I do AML check will not be different from the way Mr. B does his own AML check. And that way now we can now have what we call interoperable KYC, in that what I have from my institution will be similar to what you have in your institution. So we can share data, right? We can share customer data, right, between institutions, since what we have is almost the same or the same.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So this second should I say it's more like a reminder that we'll talk about. It's still in line with this. So last year also they released another one on sanction compliance for AML, CFT, and CPF. So just as a continuation of this, how do you see that reminder that was done to FIs as it relates to their AML, CFT, CPF sanction compliance, what they do as institutions, just to remind them that see, we are still there, we are still checking what you are doing. You should still align or keep up to speed with what are the best practices within. So what are your takes on that?
Yeah, so I think that reminder came at a very good time because I would say big financial institutions were not having any known cases, right? So let me say, we were prone to assuming that everything was working, right? But then we cannot assume that, oh, our sanctions control are very efficient because we've not identified any sanctions exposure. So, and then the thing about sanctions is that it carries far worse consequences than AML, right? Because the that human life factor in a sanctions threat is there. So that reminder is was like it was very, very significant. Sanctions compliance is not optional. It cannot be passive, and it is something that institutions must have as their forefront. So if I were to even choose, I would say it is better you do sanctions compliance than even adverse media, right? I'm not saying we should pick one, but then priority goes to sanctions compliance because we need to understand that terrorists are when it comes to terrorist financing, human lives are at stake. So these individuals, they've been sanctioned. I'm speaking now from a Nigerian perspective,
Yeah,
and we now need to understand that if our institutions are used to facilitate the movement of these funds, you can imagine the kind of reputational harm that it will
damage.
cause
Yeah,
your
yeah.
own institution. Oh, when a report that, oh, company XYZ was used to facilitate the funds that was used in the bombing of a town or a city. I mean, nobody would want to invest in that kind of institution or even have their monies there. So it is a key business risk, sanctions compliance. It is a key business risk as well. So I think the reminder was extremely significant and thumbs up to the CBN for that.
Okay, so I'll just quickly, I will just talk around the case, but we know this case focuses around VAPs, but still in line with sanctions because their issues were bordered around transaction monitoring. So the Central Bank of Ireland fined Coinbase Europe for over $21 million euro because of their failure to do proper transaction monitoring and file STR, SCR as the case may be. So I believe you heard about that when it happened last year when the fines were made. So how do we relate this down to Nigeria? Just because I think institutions maybe we have not had this big an exposure, so a lot of institutions might not be really serious with their transaction monitoring and their filing of STRU with NFIU.
Yeah, so I think the NFIU they repeatedly hammer on it always. Whenever there is a training, maybe at the CBN or anchored by the NFIU, they keep hammering on transaction monitoring, STR. So when it comes to the case of Coinbase, I think even if it happened in a vast, the lessons learned are it can be applied across board. So,
Definitely.
like you said, it's bordered around transaction monitoring. There was failure to detect suspicious activity, and when you don't detect, it simply means you cannot report. So that's already two
Yeah,
offenses.
yeah, yeah.
So, and if you read the draft, the regulator draft, you would see that Coinbase they grew, right? But their transaction monitoring efforts did not grow. Now, what can we take away from there is that growth, as growth is scaling, your compliance processes and procedures must also scale.
Yeah, yeah, the technology you're using.
Yes. And the fact that you are using technology would not mean that you would not now govern it. like I said, the governance factor in technology must always be there. So, what the message is loud and clear. Regulators expect we us to anticipate risk and then detect it and then try as much as possible to mitigate it and then report it. So, if you look at what happened, it's not an IT error, right? A majority of the transactions were not monitored. Even when they were finally monitored, they were not reported. So it is a major governance breach. And if you compare it to the CBN baseline standard, you would see that regulators want proof that you are doing what you should. There is a regulation in the UK, and the way they explain the regulation is that you must take all reasonable steps to actually try to prevent a financial crime. So that's what regulators expect you to take all the reasonable steps, right? So and then when you now do all that, you would see that you'll be better at detecting, better at monitoring, and then reporting. If financial institutions everywhere, would improve in their transaction monitoring efforts, invest in AI, invest in those who man those transaction monitoring systems, better detection, better monitoring, and then quality SLRs. It's not just enough to flag a transaction, maybe stop it and then you move on. You also need to report those transactions and then most times seek for feedback. If you message anyone at the NFIU, oh, we sent this SAR, oh, we've not heard back, they are obviously going to respond. So seek for feedback and then all those your SARs that you filed for the year, you can now say, okay, what are the lessons learned? How can we embed them in our transaction monitoring efforts just to improve? Which scenarios did we capture most? I- Is it that there is a lag in our product? That's why our product is being used to facilitate these kinds. Is it something that we can improve, or is it just a ecosystem thing? So I think what happened to them can actually happen to anyone when you grow and then your compliance does not scale. That's just basically the summary. So as business grow, compliance efforts also need to scale.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. So as we move towards closing out, so I'll just say, what can you tell us what your advice would be for anyone that's trying to come into the compliance space? People out there, because definitely, prior to this time, a lot of people definitely know about internal audits, the deadline of defense, but I know very few people know about maybe compliance or risk management. So people that want to come into this field, people that want to join us. So what's what would be your advice for them as they prep towards joining the field?
Well, my advice would be one, they should not come with the mindset that, oh, I'm just coming to follow a playbook. Is it not just to comply? You just do this and you do that. I mean, that's compliance.
You check
No.
it.
So, yes. So the checklist approach to compliance, right? So that's not it. Compliance is about sound judgment, right? Yes, there are checklists to follow, but that is just complying with the letter. There is what we call complying with the spirit of compliance. So that's where sound judgment, integrity, ownership, and responsibility comes into play. It's still using the case of transaction monitoring, right? The checklist would say have a transaction monitoring system to monitor transactions. If you have that system, you have complied. Now, but then you've only complied with the letter. Complying with the spirit will now involve you ensuring that, oh, that transaction monitoring system is calibrated to actually flag suspicious transactions and not just be generating false positives like that. And then, so it's about sound judgment and it's also about, curiosity. You need to understand why we are saying do this, why we are saying do that. So it's not just enough to say, oh, money laundering is an offense, therefore we are going to stop it, right? You need to understand why an institution may be fined for a money laundering offense and then how regulators think. So you might see, as a compliance professional, you might keep looking at it from your own point of view. But then when a regulator comes to access you and then they see a certain scenario and they ask, why did you onboard this customer? And you say the customer looks normal. I mean, we've known him for 5 years, he's employed, and then the regulator might throw a question and you'll be like, oh, I've never thought of it this way. And then you would not have any other defense to give. And that's what is practical in compliance. You need to be curious, you need to keep learning. You read about regulations, you read about the the fails, the epic fails of institutions like maybe the Coinbase. Last year, a whole lot of fines came from several institutions in the UK. You need to understand what happened, why these institutions failed, and then how you can now apply what you've learned from them. You benchmark those lessons to your own institution, your own processes, and then ask yourself, if this were to happen in my institution, is it going to catch it? Like the case where the regulators find a company um, in the abroad and they used the address of the bank. A customer used the address of the bank to open an account. Yeah. So I now asked my colleague, if this were to happen in our institution, will our onboarding system flag it? And he
Pick
said,
it.
he said, let us test it. So it is in things like this that that differentiates a paper compliance or a cosmetic compliance officer from an actual compliance officer. So like be curious, know that you are not coming to just do the work, but you are coming to protect financial institutions and protect yourself and protect the customers. And by consolation, the little things that you do as a compliance officer, it's it's more than just where you work. You are slowly, or should I say, you are unwittingly engaged in a much larger fight, right? You are in your own part safeguarding the country. Yeah, so it's part of the things that gives me consolation at night. I say, oh, because of me, maybe who knows, they did not bomb anywhere today because we flagged the transaction and stopped it. And then it inspires you to actually do more.
Okay, okay. So we'll just do two things before we call it a wrap. So I know recently one of your articles, what new gen leaders, something like that sorts, what new gen compliance leaders must be good at. So now we have spoken to people that want to join the field. So there are people already inside the field now. Maybe you just see a thing or two for those guys already inside the field as regards what they should, because it's a fresh start now, this 2026. So definitely, maybe there are a couple of things they want or they should be doing differently to make maximum impact. So any maybe just a point or two on that, then we move on.
Yes. So the very first point is new generation compliance leaders, they must understand business, right? They must understand that competitive edge in business and then they must now apply it to their process. We need to understand that we are a company, we are here to make profits, but now we need to make the profit in the most secure and safe way possible, right? So compliance should not always say no to things, right? They should say, okay, pause. let's try to see the risk here, let's eliminate the risk, and then let's do it this way. So if a business development executive is saying, oh, we need to get this ready, what compliance normally does is they'll say no. But now we now need to say, okay, pause. This is what I see going wrong here. But how about we do it this way? Now, when compliance starts, bringing these sort of initiatives, you realize that they are no longer termed as a cost center per se. You might have cases where even during product ideation stage, they are saying, let's see what the compliance people have to say. They might have, great ideas. So compliance officers should also be serving in other areas, business, technology, data analysis, learning AI skills as well. Because if you are to man an AI system, you need to know how AI system works. You need to understand the logic behind AI systems. If you are to keep analyzing, large amounts of transaction, you need to be good with data analysis. So these other skills sets you apart, right, from an average compliance officer.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much for that. So, our final question would be just for you to tell us a couple of misconceptions people have about compliance. Just a
Yes,
couple of
so yes, so the
these.
first one I said cost center. So compliance is not a cost center. I would say they are just chilling. Yes,
Yeah.
we don't want to show we don't want to show ourselves. Yes. So and then yeah, another misconception is that compliance officers always say no or we block business. But in reality, we are just here to help businesses make informed decisions, right? So if we truly need to say no, it should be for the right and very, very obvious reasons.
Reason, yeah.
So yes, so good compliance is not about stopping business. It's about protecting it. It makes no sense if you make 1 billion in revenue and let's say 200, 300 million in profits, and you're paying fine year on year of 250 million, 300 million. No. So compliance is there for like proper and safe business practices. So, and another misconception is that you actually need to be a lawyer to do compliance. No, 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 not really. I'm a graduate of mass communication and here I am thriving in this space. So it's not all about regulations. Regulations are like 1/10 of the job. What sets you truly apart is your your risk thinking, for you to be able to anticipate risk. Okay, what can go wrong, how can we fix it? Don't just identify what will go wrong and leave it. If you identify what is going to go wrong or what may go wrong, try to also come up with solutions. Okay, when we do it like this, it is now better, then we can push the products. So that's the misconception. And then the last misconception is that compliance is boring. Compliance is not boring. Compliance
See
is
that
not
we're having
boring.
fun. We're having fun online.
Compliance is not boring. You would see during transaction monitoring or onboarding, you would see lots of cases, and then you would just be like, oh dear God. So the job is actually fun, but then it requires you to be committed, attention to detail. You need to understand that you are not going to overlook the tiny things, and when not overlooking the tiny things, you should not lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
compliance is just about balance, the right regulatory action, the right business action, the everything just the right amount, and that's what compliance really is. Just balancing business with risk, with regulation, with people and processes.
Okay, so I think you have really touched a large chunk of it. I'll just add compliance is not the police force for those people out there that always see us as the police force. Okay, so we have come to the end of this episode. Chidi Ebere, thank you so much. Thank you for coming online and sharing your perspective on things. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so
To
much for
our
having me.
viewers, thank you also for joining. Like we said earlier, just like our video and subscribe to the channel to our subsequent videos. You get to be notified when they are up and out. So thank you all. We hope to see you next time when we'll be having our episode 2. Uh, do have a nice day. Thank you, Chidebe, once more. Have a nice day too. Bye.